Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 The Score and the Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune, straight out of Haugh, talking to you days before the Bears go to Detroit to try to do something that's going to be very difficult, beat the Lions at Ford Field. Busy week at Haugh, Dan. The return of Justin Fields has dominated most of the conversation. How are the Bears feeling days before kickoff?
Yeah, look, I think they're about to enter a game and really a 3-game stretch that's going to tell them a lot about their direction. They don't have to go undefeated in this stretch, obviously, but you want to see a brand of football that's competitive, that looks like it is an improved brand of football. The Bears have had moments this year where they look competent, where the functionality of everything is looking much better than it did a year ago. Now it's consistency, it's stringing it together, and it's rising to the level of high-quality opponents. This opponent in Detroit, the 7-2 Lions, is high quality. And I thought it was really interesting this week to hear from guys like Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet acknowledging how weird it is to see the Lions playing such a high-quality level of football, and just how their admiration for what the Lions are doing is so notable.
Well, they're 13-4 in their last 17 games. That's the equivalent of one full season. And the Bears obviously coming off a 3-14 year. That tells you how the two teams are in opposite directions. And it is kind of strange because you figure the Lions are going to, Lionsing used to be a verb not that long ago. And now they are kind of the class of the division. So a lot of conversation on Justin Fields' return, a lot of speculation about what this means. Let's get right into it with our opening drive.
It's time for the opening drive.
Don't think it was any surprise. Justin Fields declared the starter. He talked about his dislocated thumb healing, Dan, and I think we'll get to some audio about what everybody said. Matt Eberflus, Justin Fields, and Luke Getsy. Overall, though, how would you describe the stakes over the final 7 games for Justin Fields in a process, in a reevaluation process? Is that too strong? That begins Sunday at Ford Field.
Continues Sunday at Ford Field. That's the verb that needs to be used here, because I think that there's been this perception in some pockets that, okay, it's a 7-game report card that the Bears are going to put together. No, Justin has made 31 starts. He's been with the Bears, for 3 seasons, and they've played, I think they're up to 44 or 45 games now since he was drafted. And so this is an ongoing evaluation that continues now that he's back from the dislocated thumb, and everything that happens from this point forward will be added in to what they've watched up until this point. As far as the stakes, they're huge. They're absolutely huge, because we've documented this for a while now with what the Bears are potentially facing across multiple fronts with the decision-making process in the front office. Number one, potentially having the number 1 overall pick, or at least a top 2 or 3 pick by virtue of the Carolina Panthers. Who knows where the Bears pick winds up at the end of this? If it's still a top 10 pick, is it still a top 5 pick? How does that impact things? Justin's 5th-year option, which now under the new CBA is fully guaranteed for 2025 if the Bears choose to exercise that by May. So there are so many things that they have to make decisions on up the ladder at Haugh, that this 7-game stretch is the closing argument. So this entire trial, this 3-season trial of Justin Fields, and it's his chance to, again, as we talked about earlier in the week, take the steering wheel of this whole thing and steer it whichever direction he hopes and wants it to go. We'll see where he takes it, but the stakes are huge. Even if Justin, which we'll get to in a minute, is so grounded in the now, which I'm very impressed with.
Yeah, that's very impressive. I think he's got to look at it as a 7-game audition, if you will. And even though the Bears may think they have made their minds up, you have to leave open just a sliver of possibility. There's too many variables that are in play. They may not have the 1st overall pick. They may not be in a position to draft a quarterback. Justin Fields might be the best option after all is said and done at the end of a 17-game season. And they have to keep their mind open to that possibility and give him the chance to make a strong case. This is his closing argument, if you will. And he's got an opportunity to do over 7 games. What he did in a 6-game stretch last year was kind of change the perception of what he can be as an NFL quarterback. So I think all those things lead me to believe, and it may be overstating it or sounds like hyperbole, Sunday's as big of a game as Justin Fields has started for the Bears, only because it begins the process of being reevaluated for the reasons you described, and I think what's at stake for his career.
Yeah, and look, it's a division game, and when we talk about, we measure quarterbacks, right, by how they perform on third down, in the red zone, in big moments in the fourth quarter, and we also measure them by what they do in their division, because that's the first step in becoming a high quality and eventually an elite football team in this league is controlling your division. Justin won his first ever division start against the Lions in week 4 of his rookie season in 2021 and has since lost 10 in a row in the division. Look, like that's not good enough. His rating in division games is 79.7, and you've got this 3-game stretch now: Lions, Vikings, bye week Lions, where you're playing 3 consecutive division games against quality opponents, and we know what the Vikings did defensively to flummox him the last time that he played a game in general, and that's sandwiched between these 2 games against the division-leading Lions that should tell us a lot. And so this is it, right? Like this is go time. It's the opportunity here to respond, to meet the moment. And I think to segue a little bit into our sound here, I thought Matt Eberflus was pretty straightforward when asked on Wednesday afternoon whether the 7 remaining games were enough to make an informed judgment on who Justin Fields is as a quarterback. Here's what the Flus had to say.
I think 7 weeks is enough time for to show consistency, and being the high performer, that we expect him to be, and I know he's had some good performances, along this year. Certainly the last few have been solid, and we expect consistency, out of all our positions.
That was pretty vague. I think consistency is the word you keep hearing, and obviously the goal. Last time out, it's like they're pretending the Minnesota first half until he was injured didn't really happen, and I think that's convenient. The 2 games before that certainly were exceptions to the rule, I suppose. His overall record of as a starter is not good, but I think that the only thing he did in that answer was reinforce the need to see consistent performances out of Justin Fields.
Well, right. He used that word twice, and he used that word twice for a reason. We listened to Ryan Poles in 2022 talk about young quarterbacks and grading the flashes and being, able to see potential, right? That's what you're looking for early on in a career is does this guy have it in him to make high-level plays? Well, Justin answered those questions, and he showed flashes, and that's why he was given the opportunity to remain the undisputed QB1 for 2023. And well, now the next step is, can you clear that consistency checkpoint? And we can't pass him through that checkpoint until he earns the right to be passed through that checkpoint. Consistency is the name of the game here. The other thing that you hear from Matt Eberflus a lot, you hear from Luke Getsy a little bit, is the need to take care of the football. And so that's going to be part of the consistency grade over these next 3 games in the final 7 of the season, assuming Justin's able to start them all, which is another part of consistency, right? Are you consistently available? And when we talk about missing 11 games, missing a quarter of the team's games due to injury or illness over your career, that's part of consistency. Is can you play consistently? Because what interrupts consistency? It's not playing for a month, and obviously this is a long stretch for Justin with this thumb injury, but that's all part of the grade.
Before we get to what Justin Fields had to say about what's at stake over the 7 games, I think it's interesting to consider Jared Goff is having a very strong season, very quietly. I think he's somewhat underrated.
Yeah.
And he's hitting the long plays. I think there's only one quarterback, CJ Stroud's the only quarterback in the NFL, has more completions of 20 or more yards, and Jared Goff is getting it done. But I wonder if this is the only time over the remaining 7 games, or the Lions are the only team against whom the Bears won't have an edge at quarterback. Is that probably wishful thinking, Dan? I mean, but when you look at what Justin Fields is capable of accomplishing, and you look at Deshaun Watson is out and Kirk Cousins is out and who the Bears have left to play, shouldn't Justin Fields reasonably think that the schedule is lined up for him to succeed?
How do you feel about Kyler Murray?
Well, I mean, if he's healthy, you just don't know what version of Kyler Murray you're going to get. That's a valid comeback. I don't know if he's going to be a guy that can be dynamic 2 weeks in a row, 2 series in a row. Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray at his best,
right?
He has more experience and more positive experiences in the NFL than Justin Fields. That's a very similar matchup in terms of explosiveness. But Kyler Murray, you talk about consistency, just coming back from an ACL, certainly the first game back was what you want to see. If he's still on the field in December, I think that's going to be probably one. Yeah, okay, valid. That's probably one that they would not have the advantage.
Yeah,
of.
but look, in terms of quarterback matchups, this is not a intimidating slate to close the
Right.
season at all. The
Right.
Bears defense should be drooling at that. Now, Justin's going to have to step up and meet challenges. We mentioned the Vikings defense. We saw what Brian Flores did for 2.5 quarters. I think it was 7 possessions last month when he was able to take Justin completely out of his game and knock the Bears offense completely out of sorts. The Cleveland Browns defense has been one of the best in the league all year. That's waiting before we get to the Christmas season. And so there are some challenges here, but they're good challenges because what do you want? You want them to go play the 5 bottom defenses and put up these false positives and things that give you fool's gold's return, and you think that you've got something that you don't really have. So look, like it's a fair test, just as this whole season has been set up as a fair test. Justin's got an offensive line that is as healthy and intact as it's been going to Detroit, as it's been since training camp. He's got answers in the receiving core, in the tight end group, in the running back room to help him to not have to do it all. He's got a defense that, as we've documented here recently, that has kept the Bears in football games and is playing a level of football that you can be successful with if you can cut down on your game-changing mistakes and manage a football game accordingly. So it's a fair test, and I think he's eager to go into it, and he understands that it starts with the first question on the test, which is Detroit Sunday at Ford Field. And so this was Justin's answer when asked about the 7-game sample size and what's left for him to prove.
It just starts with Sunday and just taking it day by day. So, that's my focus right now is just, focusing on Sunday, get prepared for that. Going out there, playing hard, playing to the best of my ability.
That was a good answer. I think he was pretty stoic. I think that you heard you were there, Dan. I mean, how would you describe his demeanor? He was pretty serious, seemed pretty focused, and somebody that was ready to come back after being off a month.
Yeah, look, like I asked him directly, is this the longest stretch in your football life that you've missed inside of a season of not being in game action? He said in senior year of high school, he had at least 1, possibly 2 broken fingers on his right hand that kept him out for about the same amount of time, he said. So it's not a totally new experience, but it's frustrating. It's really difficult to, as a competitor, be confined to the sidelines, to not be able to go do what you do and what you love doing. And so you've got to learn to adapt to that. And to Justin's credit, he said he really appreciated the perspective he gained from watching from the sideline, which he's had to do before, obviously. And hopefully there are things that he took away from the 4.5 game Tyson Bagent experience that helps him, see things a little differently, helps him react a little differently, helps him make decisions a little differently. And then he also went on to say, look, like Tyson and I are different quarterbacks and we're going to play the game differently. So while I may pluck a thing or two here or there, it's not like I'm going to try to become Tyson Bagent for obvious reasons, and so we'll see where he goes.
You mean he didn't study Tyson Bagent like Chris Collinsworth advised him to do?
I never took exception to that comment the way a lot of the Chicago world did, because I thought that there were things that Tyson Bagent did in terms of pocket presence and quick decision making and distributing the ball that this quarterback should borrow and add to his game, which obviously has a much higher ceiling and has a much greater level of potential because of the gifts he has. Well, now you start to add in some of the nuanced parts of quarterback play, you can make yourself even better.
I think that's fair, but I also think that everything is about tone and delivery, and the tone and delivery of that comment at that time in that context was sounding somewhat condescending, and it was in the context of everything else where NBC was really laying on thick the education of Tyson Bagent, and I think that just came off a little bit. Thankfully, the wrong way, but thankfully Justin Fields took it for what it was worth and handled it very well, as he did the question for Patrick Finley when Patrick asked him if when Tyson Bagent had success, some people wanted to create a quarterback controversy. This is how he answered that with that exchange.
Yeah, of course, but that's the world we live in nowadays. Everybody wants, everybody wants to cause a stir, cause media attention, boom, 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 comments, stories. So that's just what comes with it. But, I knew that was going to happen from the get-go, so it came to me as no surprise. But, like I said, I was coming in the building every day, being the same guy I was, before I was hurt, and, just trying to be the best leader I can be.
Obviously, David, when Patrick Finley asked about quote unquote some people creating a quarterback controversy, he was directly referring to our producer Adam Studzinski, who was at the front of the line to create a Justin versus Tyson battle royale, as we've documented on this podcast many times. I did like Justin's answer to that because he looked like Justin's maturity through everything he's been through 3 seasons is impressive. It's totally admirable, and it's one of the reasons that people inside the building feel so strongly about giving him the opportunity to succeed because he's earned that. He's earned that credibility inside the building, and it's cool because he's not going to shrivel from this moment in his career, right? He may not perform up to expectations. He may not satisfy the wants of the Bears fan base, and more importantly, the Bears coaching staff and front office at Haugh. But Justin's not going to, cower and suddenly be like, oh my God, my career's on the line. I'm going to get all tight and over urgent and try to do too much. And it's going to come completely unraveled. And so now let's go take the test. Let's go see what it looks like starting Sunday in Detroit.
Yeah, performances like that, or I guess just answers like that, make you think and you feel confident. I do think Justin Fields is going to be an NFL starting quarterback. I don't know if it's going to be in Chicago. I really am not sure after had this where this year's gone and where the draft realities may come into play. But I do like the way he handles himself, and I think on Wednesday was the latest example. And I think that that maturity and that leadership that seems very natural has always been his strongest suit.
There's no question. And one last voice on this topic, because we obviously heard Matt Eberflus call for consistency, and then the offensive coordinator a day later, Luke Getsy, met with us in the media room at Haugh and was asked about what does consistency look like through your eyes down the stretch of this season for Justin Fields.
Always starts with taking care of the football, right? I think that's the starting point for anybody on offense, but specifically the quarterback. And then it's just like what I was mentioning before. It's about getting better and progressing each and every week, right? And so I think there was really cool parts of this season that we saw that from him, right? And then unfortunately the injury comes. So let's get back on track with that and let's continue to grow together.
Does movement in the pocket fall into that category for you?
I mean, for sure. I think that's because that's part of taking care of the football, right? I think that's, sometimes there's bad looks or bad play calls or bad whatever, and you have to make the best out of it, not make a bad play worse, right? And so that's part of that. And then pocket movement, sometimes somebody makes a mistake and we'll avoid it, and you can minimize that mistake as much as you can. That's part of playing that position for sure. And so all that stuff together is part of him growing.
David, I love that answer because that for me is so much of this, right? When we talk about the eye test down the stretch of this season, it's what do you look like in the pocket? Are you comfortable? Are you able to get out of something that is dangerous and turn it into something productive, or at the very least non-dangerous, right? And can you manipulate the pocket? Can you climb more than Justin has? Can you shuffle? Can you make throws when you're not just taking your drop, hitting it and throwing it? That's all part of this. And I think that they want to see that on a consistent level. And then obviously, as you hear again, ball security and taking care of the football in key moments is a very big deal for where they're going right now.
Back to what Fields could have learned from Bagent, or things that Bagent did that Fields can do as well, maybe improve on. Tyson Bagent really had, and sometimes to a fault, like the anticipatory throws. He would throw before the break, or he would make sure that he was hitting receivers in stride, probably in a way that Justin Fields could improve on. And that's an area where he could certainly improve on. And you would like to see that. As far as the ball security, I thought that was an interesting answer in terms of the quest for consistency, because, I think what happens is when you return to Fields instead of Bagent, you go from trying not to lose a game to having to try to win it. And when you do that, I think you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive. When you're more aggressive, you might be exposing yourself to, not protect the football as well, or maybe trying to make that throw that might be a little bit riskier, or make that play and you lunge in for an extra yard, and maybe ball security is a problem. That's what you have to watch out for. But I do wonder, did you get a sense from Luke Getsy that even though the concerns are valid and pretty much it goes without saying about ball security, did you get any sense that he was going to maybe approach the game plan any differently than he might or than he has for the previous 4 weeks?
I didn't get that sense. what I'd like to see sprinkled in a little bit more is some of that movement, and move the pocket for Justin, get him on the move, use some play action, do some things, particularly early in this game, to just get him back in a rhythm and in some comfort, and getting him on, on the move, where Justin seems to get settled in quicker when they do that. It'll be really interesting because this game plan, whatever happens Sunday, is going to be scrutinized to the nth degree Sunday night, Monday morning, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of Thanksgiving week. And wherever you're having Thanksgiving dinner, they're going to ask you about Luke Getsy's game plan, I'm sure, because that's just the topic here in town. And this will be notable, right? It'll be another point in this Bears season where we shine the magnifying glass on things and can make some judgments about what they did to set Justin up for success, or maybe in the worst case scenario, not set him up properly for success.
It's not a scientific poll. It's not a Twitter poll. It's not anything that you can really measure. It's just anecdotal. But in the past week, I've probably been stopped, as you probably are around town, half dozen times. Let's say a half dozen times that somebody says, "Oh, you're so-and-so. Oh, I know you. Hey, what about the Bears?" And then it comes. It's not really about Eberflus. It's not really about Justin Fields. The most common question and complaint revolves around Luke Getsy. I mean, there is an awareness amongst Bears fans and a annoyance level, and that people have reached their limit in terms of running out of patience. I sense my own experience anecdotally that they're more fed up with Luke Getsy. It'd be like, okay, well, obviously the McCaskies, that are at the top of the list. Sell the team, it's the McCaskies. And then I almost wonder if Luke Getsy is next, and it's gotten to the point where the Bears offensive coordinator is back to being one of the more unpopular people in all of Chicago.
Yeah, the problem I have is that it's predictable, and it's something that Brad Biggs and I predicted in June, and then again in July and August, when there were some struggles with the quarterback in training camp, when we said, they're coming for Luke first, and so here we are. Look, like I don't think Luke has been a top 10 or 12 coordinator in the league this year by any stretch of the imagination, but he's been turned in this city into the boogeyman by a lot of people as the guy who's like, in some people's eyes, like almost going out of his way to make Justin worse. And it's baffled me how quickly that conversation has gotten into the extremist territory that we try to stay out of with the electric fence that we put around here. But like
I've been zapped a couple times. I've been zapped a couple times. I've gone after Getsy. I've been chasing that criticism car. I'm like,
maybe I haven't heard it as wildly from you as I have.
It's not wild
in other pockets, but you look like this is a union though, and as a coordinator and a quarterback and as an offense, you got to find that marriage, and like I think to Luke's credit, he has been adapting, over time. He adapted a year ago and unlocked something that bought the Bears more time to continue their development of Justin Fields in an environment that wasn't as tense and supercharged. He did things, after the first month of this season to try to get some things unlocked, and they had success. He had to pivot to an undrafted rookie from Shepherd, and they won 2 of their 4 games in part because they were setting some things up that allowed them be successful there. So you can't have all those things happen and then say like this guy is the biggest buffoon and boob that's ever existed in Bears coordinator history, as some people will do, and they will probably do it at my Thanksgiving dinner next week as well. And then I'll have to say, get out your phone. I'm going to get you the Take the North podcast episode, or you're going to go in the back room and you're going to listen to this, and you're going to come back and we can resume our conversation.
Last thing on Getsy, because my criticism has hopefully not been crazy out of control, but I think it's been confined to a couple of different areas. I mean,
I didn't even know we had fitted you for the electric fence collar.
I mean, I know it's like I got the people like they're painting around my yard. They're ready to install it, and they got all the marks on my yard and ready to be confined. But I don't want to go across. I don't want to cross the line. But I think that number one, it drives me crazy sometimes when on short yardage situations he ignores the obvious and won't take the gimme. And I think that's guilty of a lot of offensive coordinators in the NFL. Secondly, I haven't liked the way that he sometimes will candidly blame players instead of taking responsibility the way a lot of coaches do. I understand sometimes that's all in the name of accountability, but I don't like his tendency to necessarily do that. And the third thing is I think the inflexibility of trying to fit, the skill set of Justin Fields into his scheme rather than fit, it's always the same old story, trying to tailor the scheme around the talents. And I think he's a young coach with a lot of potential, but you do have to give him credit for getting the most out of Tyson Bagent, which is, I think, what a lot of coaches almost relish, that challenge of taking somebody who has, what's considered modest talent in the NFL and getting the most out of it. And that really challenges them to do things that they might not be able to do with more superior athletes. So anyway, I'll definitely stay within the confines of my electric fence and try to be fairer to Luke Getsy.
I had a private text conversation with someone. This was probably just before Justin got hurt, about some of these conversations and this almost mythical offensive system that people want them to run that is specifically tailored precisely to what Justin is as a quarterback. And this person, who is very, very football knowledgeable, said that's the Mitch Trubisky offense that everyone wanted at the end of Mitch's time here, which is like this all you do is cut the field in half and run play action and get him on the move. And you run this elementary offense that can basically unlock short-term success for you, but is not sustainable at any sort of high level. There's a very low ceiling on that. And so we can go forward again. We'll watch this game Sunday in Detroit. We'll see what the game plan looks like. Maybe I'll do a deep dive into every single play they call and figure out what it looked like in Justin's first game back. But I don't know. There's just, it feels like knee jerk to me for a lot of people to go ahead. You can respond.
I don't know if it's mythical because we've seen it. It may be something that isn't sustainable to get to the Super Bowl, but everything's incremental, to use a Trubisky term, incremental progress. And it's not mythical because we saw it work. And then there was a departure from that because it was almost like the Bears overcorrected because they didn't think that method was sustainable. But we saw the Justin Fields offense work. Justin Fields, was James Harden. He was the system. Are you talking about
for the 4 games last year in October and early November?
4 or 6 games.
It was 4.
Okay.
But like defenses figured that out, and they said, okay, like, we're not going to let you do that. We're not going to let you beat us in that fashion, and you're going to have to develop a counterpunch. And the counterpunch has to be a starting quarterback in the NFL learning how to be a consistently productive passer. We ran through the numbers of how historically low they were in terms of passing production, and they've been better this year, but they haven't been fantastic. And so eventually, as a quarterback in the NFL, you have to be a productive passer. And so I don't know, like, again, we're getting off track here, and we got a lot of other ground to cover. We'll see what happens at Ford Field, and we'll be able to kind of circle back on this, and maybe we'll dive into some specifics next week of what worked, what didn't, and what we could have seen instead.
Speaking of rants, let's get into our numbers game and predictions. Really good numbers package this week in ChicagoTribune.com. I stole from it on Thursday morning a little bit already, Dan, with your number 41, the number of completions of 20 yards or longer by Jared Goff, ranking second in the league to Texans rookie C.J. Stroud. Thank you for that little nugget on the Mully and Haugh show. What else you got?
Yeah, that was one of them. I'm going to start you on the same topic with Justin Fields and give you 67, and that was the length of Justin's touchdown run against the Lions last November at Soldier Field. It's the longest run of his career, the longest run of his 1,143-yard rushing season. He had 10 rushes a year ago of 20 yards or more. 4 of them came against Detroit. And so you've got maybe something here in this Lions defense that you can expose a little bit. All 4 of those runs at 20 plus were very, very different concepts, but it was Justin getting into the open field and making a big play. And so
can't do that. Defense will adjust.
We'll see, right? We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. We'll turn it loose. My second number you alluded to a little bit ago, and it's that 13-4 mark that the Lions have over the last 17 games. League-wide, over the last 17, there's only 3 teams that have been better: Chiefs, Eagles, 49ers. We know that those guys are the heavyweights in the league right now, and so that puts the Lions in that category. And as you mentioned, the Bears, by contrast, are 3-14 in the last 17. Only team worse in the league, those putrid Arizona Cardinals, who are coming here for Christmas Eve. They've been 2-15 in their last 7.
This is a different topic, and certainly it could be a long podcast, but is that my worst take of the season at the beginning of the year, thinking the Lions were not legit?
We've got a whole postseason episode devoted to these. I'm sure that we may be able to get studs to dig up a couple of those bad ones. But we always have, we also do the Honk Honk Awards, so we'll definitely mute those. My last number, and this one I love because this one is going to be very relevant to Sunday's game, and it's 100, and it's the number of career 4th down attempts by Dan Campbell since he became a head coach of the Lions 2.5 seasons ago. The Lions love a little fourth down aggression. Last week in LA against the Chargers, they went for it on fourth down 5 times, converted 4 of them, including on their final drive when they passed up a potential game-winning field goal attempt because they did not want to give Justin Herbert the ball back after he had led 5 consecutive touchdown drives, and they were able to convert 4th and 2 on a Jared Goff to Sam Laporta pass, drain the rest of the clock, and then kick the Riley Patterson game-winning field goal. But you better be ready. And we talked to Bears coaches all day. Dave Borgonzi, John Hoke, talked about how David, this sign in the NFL. It's like, hey, we just forced a team to get to fourth down. We're off the field as a defense. No, you're not. You better be ready to stay on the field because they may go for it. They may fake a punt. They're going to be ultra aggressive. And so you better be ready to play all 4 downs.
That's insane. That was an insane decision. 4th and 2, you kick the field goal, you take the lead. I know you give them what if they would have missed and then the Chargers would have gone down and scored and they would have lost? It's crazy.
I've got a lot more on this in our segment after we make our predictions, because it does relate to who Dan is as a coach and why it's working in Detroit right now, because it's more than just the analytics of it. But yeah, I mean, fascinating, right? Like, so be ready on fourth down to stay glued to the set or wherever you're watching the game.
Before we get to our predictions, let's go into the Wayback Machine. January 1st, 2023.
The
Bears had just lost on New Year's Day to the Lions, 41-10 at Ford Field. I think that this was the loss that put some of us, well, at least one of us, top.
Like, I woke up that morning and I made a hard and fast New Year's resolution to be calmer and more composed with everything I did. And then later in that afternoon, I had a little bit of a reaction.
It was a great
Studs is pulled out of the time machine.
Here we go.
Just insane right now to see the number of things this team has to be concerned about. Again, this was the league's worst defense that they were facing. They came into the day healthier offensively than they've been in a while. They had Claypool available to them. Equanimeous St. Brown is back from the concussion. Dante Pettis was able to get cleared to be active today. Tevin Jenkins was back to start. Cody Whitehair was back to start. Well, then what happens, right? Tevin Jenkins lost again to another injury, neck injured again. Availability, big question there. This is a guy that a month ago everyone said he should be in the Pro Bowl. He can't stay on the field, right? These receivers, you traded a 2nd-round pick for Chase Claypool. He had more temper tantrums on the sideline than he had catches today, 1-0, right? I mean, there's just so many things that are concerning here, and we've just spent months as a city trying to rationalize, oh, it's great for a draft pick. It's okay if you lose all these games. The future's so bright. Like, today was an illumination of just how unbright it is and how much work they have to do to get, 3,000 flashlights to make it bright.
Unbright it is. That sounds like a slogan. 3,000 flashlights. Wow. That's frustration. That's frustration talking.
I actually had a little bit of PTSD there because it's like, this has been my existence on this beat for 11 years.
Yeah, I mean, it adds up. I mean, it does. It's the cumulative effect. I've been around for 20, not actually day to day, but it is. There's some PTSD. That's why you become numb to it almost when things like this season happen. At least there hasn't been any assistant coaches fired lately.
Yeah, I was walking out of Haugh Hall on Thursday afternoon and feeling like this was the most normal routine week that we've had in a couple months, whether it's because it wasn't a short week, it's a standard schedule and nothing major happened. Like there was literally no news on Thursday at all at Haugh Hall. And you're like, wait a second, like there's literally nothing of relevance happened here today. And so sometimes that's okay. It
never happens. All right, let's bring in Studs to make our predictions because I do wonder which direction he's headed after the Bears are trying to put together a 2-game winning streak for the first time in the Eberflus era.
So, yeah, I real quick, can I say something about the going for it on fourth down stuff? Because I absolutely love it. You're trying to win the game. You're not trying to lose. Like, you're not trying not to lose. You're trying to win the game. By going for it on 4th and 2, you win the game almost automatically. The Bears did the same thing earlier this year by going for a 4th and 1 that they didn't succeed on against Denver. Had they converted that fourth down, they win the game. Unless Carlos Santos misses a field goal, which he wouldn't have. So anyway, I just needed to get that out. Like, I love that he goes for it on fourth down. More coaches should do it like Brandon Staley does. I know it hasn't worked out for him as well as he would like, and it might get him fired, but I love that he does it. So anyway, more coaches need to do it. And I think that That's part of the attitude of Dan Campbell and what this team is turned into. So, and also, David, your take on the Lions before the season, not a bad take. I had the same thing. They needed to prove it to me. So, and they've proved it so far. That being said, I'm picking the Bears this week just because I want to believe that they're going to win.
Wow.
What's the score?
I got what did I say? I can't remember what I said on the score website. It doesn't matter. I got them winning by 3. I think 29 to 26 or 26 to 23. So it's 3-point victory.
Upset alert. Upset alert.
All right, good call. Listen, the Lions could have a letdown. They're coming back from a West Coast trip, a walk-off field goal. They play with emotion. Maybe they'll be a little bit flat.
That is my concern for the Lions this week. I think that if they are to stumble in this situation, it's because they are going to come out a little bit bored because they've been on a little bit of a run and they're just not as jacked up as they need to be. I also have told you all week that I'm really excited to get into that environment at Ford Field because I think that's going to be the instant wake-up call and the alarm. And so I have the Lions winning this game 29-17. I just think that they are high-powered enough offensively to make the Bears play keep up. And I'm not sure the Bears, with Justin Fields knocking off some rust, are going to be able to do that in that building. We'll see which direction it goes.
Yeah, I think the Lions' offensive line is going to control the football game, and that's to be probably they get a lot of attention for a lot of things. Their offensive line against the Bears' defensive front that's good against the run. It's just going to be too big of a match. The Bears step up in class. I think Jared Goff is going to manage the game and take advantage of some opportunities. The Bears will be competitive. I think, though, it will eventually they'll fall short. 31-24 Lions, and boy, it'll be closer than New Year's Day. But Justin Fields coming back will spark the offense a little bit, but I just don't think they're going to be able to stop the Lions' running game because as much as the Bears talk about their running game, the Lions' 1-2 punch of Gibbs and Montgomery pretty good.
No question.
All right, great. Good prediction there, studs. Who knows? Bears could pull one off, and you'll be right. All right, let's segue into our look at the Lions and Dan Campbell because to me, he is Dan. I mean, you can mention D'Amico Ryans, you can mention some other guys. I think Dan Campbell has a legitimate claim right now as a front runner for the NFL Coach of the Year. What he's done in terms of just having his team reflect his personality is something that you want with every hire. And it may have taken some time, and it's a little unorthodox, maybe a lot unorthodox, but give credit where it's due. He's really got this team playing for him.
Yeah. Look, there's a notable level of passion that he coaches with, and there's a notable level of passion that the Lions play with. There's energy. There's this mix of just everything that you want. And I wrote a piece for my storylines piece at chicagotribune.com about that magic touch. And when you circle back to this game last week against the Chargers, it's a small snapshot in time of what Dan Campbell has meant over his time here. Don't forget, he was 3-13-1 in his first season with the Lions. They got off to a 1-6 start in his second season, and since they've gotten on this run here, they won 8 of 10 to finish last year, 7 of 9 to start this year. And what you see is just this building belief. And so Jared Goff talks about that play we just talked about a minute ago. 4th and 2, you've got a chance to kick a go-ahead field goal, and you say, no, we're going to go get this here. And not only are we going to go get this here, we're going to allow Ben Johnson to dial up a passing play. And you're going to go through 3 reads as a quarterback, and then you're going to circle back to your second option there, and you're going to hit it. And Jared Goff said after the game, he said, Dan's got big balls. And he went on to say that it makes us want him to be right. And so that back and forth of the trust factor creates this juice. And I'm the huge juice guy. You've heard it before from me in terms of wanting a team to have juice. And here's how I would define juice. It's a combination of belief, it's collective confidence as a group, it's fearlessness, and it's the desire for those big moments. And when you get all of those things together and you get that juice flowing, it results in what's happening for the Lions right here, where it's just like, let's go. It's the LFG effect, where the juice gets going and then everybody believes that the biggest moments are going to come and you are going to meet them together because your coach trusts you to meet those moments and he's prepared you to meet those moments. And there's just a special effect, as Studs was saying a minute ago, to that aggressiveness, to that mentality that is more than just the analytics, right? They've gone for it 100 times. They've missed it 47 times. But guess what? You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. When you're playing with that fearlessness and that belief and that collective confidence, it's meaningful, and they've got it going. The last Bears team, I think, that had that juice was 2018, and we saw how that ended.
Those are great points. Those are great points. And I think that, I can tap into my inner Eberflus and be the footballiest of football guys, because that is the way that I love the sport and always have, and I respect all of that stuff. I do think though it always helps to tap into that juice and to use it to your advantage and use emotion to get over the top when you have first round draft picks whose juice you are getting to flow. It helps to have Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, and all of the receivers. And then you draft Brian Branch and he fits in. I mean, they have talent in Detroit, which makes me, this is a question to me, the chicken or the egg thing. Is it Dan Campbell getting this team to overachieve or to play up to its potential, or to be, risk averse or not to be afraid to take the risks and to get the rewards? Or is it Brad Holmes putting together this roster in a way that gives Dan Campbell tons of good options, because this is one of the better rosters in the NFC now because of its completeness? So I go back and forth, but I do want to say that it's tough to get the Lions, any professional team, to play as much for their coach as the Lions seem to be playing for their coach.
Yeah, and it's significant, and we'll see where it goes down the stretch of the season. Like, the Lions were projected to do some really big things this year, and so that probably eliminates Dan Campbell from Coach of the Year conversations, because almost always it goes to like the team that wasn't expected to do much and then did something. But I would make the argument that right now you couldn't find a coach that's done a better job of getting his team to play up to their potential and to go chase big things the way the Lions are with Dan Campbell.
I'd make the same argument. I think it sometimes gets overlooked just because the Lions came into the season with high expectations. They were playing the Chiefs in the opener, doesn't diminish what Dan Campbell has done to make all of that happen. They haven't fallen short of expectations. Sometimes the hardest part about coaching is getting your team to meet them, not exceed them. So Dan Campbell, to me, is right now done the best job of any coach in the NFL because of what they're able to say that they are at little after midseason.
And by the way, in that storylines piece that I referenced, I did point out that their first victory of the season came on the road against the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, in which they ran a fake punt on 4th and 2 from their own 17-yard line to extend what turned into a eventual touchdown drive in what turned out to be a 1-point win against the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's just another one of those examples where you're like, there's a little something to it. If it fails, it's miserable. But when it works, all of a sudden that momentum is pretty palpable and pretty significant.
Little asterisk about that victory, though, against the Chiefs. I mean, Tay wasn't there.
That's a good point. She
wasn't in the picture yet. So
maybe they'll get a rematch.
They're a different team when the Swifties are part of the Chiefs kingdom. All right, let's wrap things up with our 2-minute drill.
The 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
Dan, I don't understand it. Nate Davis is back. He's at right guard. Tevin Jenkins, the most versatile guy in that offensive line, switch over to the left side willingly, it seems. He'll make himself some money if he can be that versatile. He'll become more valuable. Why did the Bears change up their offensive line yet again?
Comfort. They wanted to keep the comfort of Nate Davis where he is good playing. Don't forget, Tevin Jenkins was slated to be the starter at left guard all through the spring, all through the summer, all up until the point that he got hurt in training camp. And so he has worked there enough to be able to go back to that position without much of a hiccup. Maybe this is something you revisit when you get to the offseason and you figure out if you want to reshuffle things. But for right now, they just felt like that was the best comfort play for them, particularly going on the road with a quarterback that needs to be really reliant on the offensive line to hold up to do what he needs to do on Sunday.
Number 5 in Honolulu Blue on Sunday will be David Montgomery, a familiar face with a familiar running style. 501 yards, 106 carries, 4.7 yards per carry, Dan, 3 games over 100 yards. David Montgomery is an impact player for the Lions. I don't know how surprised you are, but with Jahmyr Gibbs, he gives the Lions one of the better 1-2 punches in the NFL.
It's scary. No, that's a scary 1-2 punch. And obviously the Lions invested in David Montgomery in free agency. And then they, defied current modern day NFL logic by drafting Jahmyr Gibbs right after that, a month later and putting those two together. Well, You talk to Bears defensive coaches and they go, my God, like this is really difficult to slow down. David's having a really good year. I think there's been some misconceptions on his departure from Chicago. I thought the Bears did a lot to try to keep him here. And I think if anybody wants to like really dive deep into that story, it's that David Montgomery wanted to change the scenery. He wanted to go somewhere where he felt like they were on an escalator towards NFL success. And so if you're going to be mad at the Bears for anything, it's not being good enough to keep a player like that believing that you're on the verge of succeeding. And so he's in Detroit now and presumably on his way to the playoffs.
Not one, but two brother combinations will be matching up on Sunday at Ford Field. You've got the St. Brown brothers, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions and Equanimous St. Brown for the Bears. And then you've got Noah Sewell for the Bears, the outside linebacker, the rookie, and Penei Sewell, the older brother, the right tackle, who's a difference maker for the Lions. That's a lot of fun.
They were going to be teammates for one season at Oregon, and then Penei Sewell did the business practical move and decided to sit out that season and prepare himself for the NFL draft. We'll see what happens on Sunday at Ford Field. Obviously, Noah Sewell is a player that is on the rise, I think, in the Bears coaching staff's eyes. He plays with great instincts. We heard from Dave Borgonzi on Thursday just talking about a little bit of that, the instinctive nature with he plays. Hopefully up the road he earns a bigger role, but right now the Bears are really good with the combinations that they have with Edwards and Sanborn now, and when Edmonds comes back, he'll obviously slot back into the start.
Speaking of brothers and relationships, are we sure that Jack Campbell and Jack Sanborn aren't related because they sure play alike?
Different last names, so that's one of the obvious tells there. So the guess
aren't they similar? Don't they look like they're the same player? I mean, both very good linebackers. I know Jack Campbell was a first-round pick and Jack Sanborn was undrafted, but boy, they are both Big Ten linebackers that play a similar style.
There you go. Yeah.
And as for wrap it up with, you have an appreciation for Cairo Santos, but I tell you what, if there's a kicker to appreciate, it's Riley Patterson. He walked off a victory for the Lions. What do you want to give love to Cairo Santos for?
Well, a couple things here. So Patterson was one of 6 kickers to kick a buzzer-beating field goal to win a game on Sunday in Week 10. That was a big week for kickers. I spent 10 minutes at Cairo's locker on Wednesday, and we talked about 2 things that were pretty notable. Number one was the ending sequence to that Broncos-Bills game. You can read about that in storylines because I thought it was cool to get a specialist's eyes on what was a pretty frenzied sequence with the Broncos running that hurry-up field goal attempt, missing it, and then getting the luxury of a 12 men on the field penalty from Buffalo to then win the game in that situation. But Cairo also was 3 for 3, and we talked about that last week. He kicks a 54-yarder against the Panthers last week in the first quarter after his 49-yard make was nullified by a penalty. And you heard from inside the building this week how just ultra comforting it is to know that you've got a guy, a leader, a dependable contributor that can make up for a big mistake there. If you take 3 points off the board with a false start penalty and a field goal kick, that's how you lose football games. Cairo makes it from 54. Well, Cairo's now 4 for 4 on 50-plus field goals this season. He has made 3 of those inside Soldier Field. And so we talked a lot about kind of the emphasis he had in the offseason of getting better on his long-range kicks. And he said it's not about leg strength with him. It's about how well he's striking the ball. And he found some things in his technique, and he found ways to work on the consistency in a way that's paying off in a big way. When you have a grind game like they had last week against the Panthers, you better be able to lean on your kicker in big moments. He was 4 for 4, including the PAT, and that's a big deal. So I'm giving Cairo his semi-annual shout out here on the Take the North pod.
10 minutes, huh?
Yeah, great conversation. Like that guy is really, really good at elaborating on a lot of stuff. And that I'm telling you, that Bills Broncos sequence is a really weird one to me. I don't know if you had any reaction watching it live, but I was just curious to kind of get a kicker's eyes on, like, why would your coach play the risk reward game of putting you in fire drill situation when you don't have to? Like, sometimes it's necessary. Yeah.
They created urgency. Why did they do that? That was dumb. And then what was even dumber was that the Bills have the 12 men on the field. The special teams have the blunder. The head coach makes a mistake. Let's fire the offensive coordinator. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm glad you gave your kicker some love. All right, some bookkeeping, some housekeeping. This is a Take the North podcast. You listen to us on the free Odyssey app, and you can watch us on the 670 Scores YouTube page. December 2nd, 2 o'clock, 670 The Score and 670thescore.com, and on your free Odyssey app. Take the North podcast will start to have will start to be played 2:00 on Saturday on December 2nd. The Take the North podcast will have special broadcast, rebroadcast of that week's Friday drop. So if you don't listen to us on your Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, you can catch us on 670 The Score, 2:00 on Saturdays beginning on December 2nd. So
that's exciting. You told me something I didn't know.
See? Yeah, I surprised you. Probably surprised studs too. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to share that publicly yet, but it's in the works and it will get done. And if you listened to this long into the podcast, 50 minutes, you deserve a little bit of a cookie at the end. There's the cookie. Thank you. And it'll be a lot of fun. All right. So we'll wrap things up. We'll be coming back on Sunday night with the Reaction Podcast. Hopefully Dan will not have a rant from Ford Field to give us some analysis there. We'll be probably Sunday night after the game, and we'll react to whatever happens Sunday between the Bears and the Lions. For Adam Sadinsky, Dan Wiederer, I'm David Haugh. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.